Good morning. This is Paul Pradell, Chairman of the Website Committee. Just wanted to welcome everybody to our October meeting and give you all a quick orientation before I turn it over to President Gary DeLita. In the right-hand upper corner, you should have a control menu that will allow you to submit questions when we get to the question and answer session. Everybody is in listen-only mode, and so all attendees will not be able to speak during the session, but you can communicate with us via the question and answer session, our control panel in the top right. We've been getting a lot of questions through the website committee and the scholarship committee about scholarship credit. We are giving scholarship credit for this meeting, provided that the registration email address matches your profile email. So after the fact, we'll go through and match those, and then provided you stay on for at least 30 minutes, scholarship credit will be granted. Give our membership committee about 2 weeks to get that done, and you'll see that come through with your confirmation email. In our last virtual sessions, we had less than a handful of people that did not click on the links to register or to attend, but rather they just dialed in on their phone. Unfortunately, our product does not capture the phone numbers of people that do that. So if you do that and you want scholarship credit, please email the scholarship committee a screenshot of your call log so that we can see the phone number that was logged and how long you were on. And then the last question we've been getting quite a bit is, how do I check my credit? If you go to our website under About Us, there's frequently asked questions, and the last frequently asked question is, how do you check your scholarship credit? So with that, I will turn it over to President Gary DeLita. Gary?
Well, thank you, Paul. Yeah, I'd just like to welcome everyone to our monthly meeting this afternoon. Another virtual meeting. Hope everyone's staying healthy mentally and physically during these challenging times. I forgot to ask a veteran to get on the panel and do the Pledge of Allegiance, so I'm going to kick it off with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would with me, pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Then I'd just like to give a few updates on a few things before we hand it off to our speaker here today. First is the monthly meeting update. Talked a little bit about it last week, but I think you members saw it come out. The registration opened up for our November monthly meeting, and it is going to be in person at the Norris Center in the City Center, which is out near the Town and Country Mall. I think most folks know where that is. Again, the registration was opened up last Wednesday, September 30th, and it's going to close on October 25th. We aren't going to allow any walk-ins due to contact and all this COVID stuff, handling credit cards, etc. So really encourage everybody to go online and to register as soon as you can, because this is a new venue for us. We're trying to work through a contract with the Norris Center. We need to give them a head count as soon as we can and get all that squared away. So please, if you plan to attend in person, please go on, register. You can also choose to we'll also do it in parallel virtually, and you'll get scholarship credit for either method, as long as the virtual attendees stay online for at least 30 minutes. And I think Paul implemented that with today's meeting also. And then the last thing, we did have to increase our prices by $10 per person for the monthly meetings. Unfortunately, we had a really good deal with the Hess Club, and just couldn't find anywhere else that we could get close to. So we're not trying to make a lot of money off these things, just break even, and we just had to do it. So, and then for our December meeting, we'd again like to do that or in person and probably virtual too. Not sure. We are going to try a different venue, the ballroom downtown, for the December meeting, just to try it out, and then after that make a decision if we want to go North Center or ballroom moving forward. Next on our PTEX training, again, I'd like to remind everybody that that training is available to our members. There's an online link under the Education tab on our website. The first module is Pipeline Design. As of last Thursday, we only had 40 people registered, so that's kind of disappointing. That more folks aren't taking advantage of that training. It is free, so I'd like to see more folks get signed up for that. And next, just briefly like to go through some of the committee updates. First one from the awards committee, awards scholarship committee, not much on the scholarship front, but on the awards, we will give our presentation for Pipeliner of the Year award to Doug Scott at the November meeting. So we thought we'd wait to do that in person to honor Doug there. Fish Out, the 10th annual Fish Out is going to be held next June, as it always is, the first weekend in June, June 4th and 5th, 2021. We're going to go back to a 2-day event this year instead of the 3-day event. We're also looking at the same venue we did last year's or this year's 2020 event, Marker 37 Marina there in Corpus Christi, unless the pavilion in Port Aransas changes its stance regarding large gatherings and COVID. So we have both of those venues booked just in case we can move back to our original venue. Golf tournament was held Monday a week ago, September 28th at Kingwood. I was out there. It seemed to be a good turnout, even with all the COVID restrictions in place. Again, many thanks to all the volunteers and sponsors who gave freely of their time, their talents, their treasures to make this event, and in fact, all of our events a success. We can't do it without the volunteers and the sponsors to contributing their time and again their money to make all these events a success and to allow us to give scholarships to kids. Regarding clays, the sporting clays shoot is scheduled for Friday, October 16th. The morning's already sold out. I'm not sure from Jim if we closed out registration yet.
It's all full.
It's all full. So both of them are sold out. Very good. That's good news. We're going to operate business as usual out there with, of course, certain COVID-related guidelines. I think we had them in place in the spring. So we'll have additional hand wash stations, cookers only handling the food. Face coverings are going to be required in the pavilion. Remember that. Bring your face coverings. We do have a waiver released at Westside Sporting Grounds is going to require you to sign or for the team captains to acknowledge in regards to COVID. As far as the veterans, the Pipeliners is providing hats for all veteran members of our association. If you're a veteran member and wish to request your hat, go to the website and sign up. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, again, the hats, if you request a hat, they'll be mailed to you once they arrive. And I want to give a special thanks to Ryan Reed, fellow brother and a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, and his company BWS company for their sponsorship of those hats. So again, thanks to all our veterans and all they did for our country and continue to do. PYP announcements. Number one, PYP does plan to have an annual bowling event at Bowl and Barrel in October. We're already in October, so they're accepting sponsors for this event, as well as looking for teams to sign up. Again, space will be limited due to social distancing requirements. Go to the website to see sponsorship levels, and you can also contact Ross Johnston, Clint Aiken, or Cynthia Guerra for further details regarding sponsorship. And secondly, the PYP mentorship program is still alive and well and continues to accept mentees and mentors. And if you want to be a mentor or mentee, you can contact Grady Harrison or Brandon Butts for more information. Let's see what else next. Membership. We have 1,290 paid members through 12/31/21. Again, a reminder that those dues, membership year started, I guess, July 1st. And it is an 18-month this time, one time only. We're extending it through the end of next year, $100. Membership committee also and scholarship committee wanted me to remind you that members need to have 6 recorded attendances to qualify for as a scholarship sponsor. So I think with the exception of the not having a spring golf tournament, and I think that was replaced by a couple of virtual meetings that we had in May. There should have been plenty of opportunities for you to have 6 attendances this year. So just remind you, we do have today, kind of late to do that, but we will have again November and December, and the clay sheet. So there's 3 more, and PYP, of course. So there should be plenty of more opportunities coming up to get you in your 6 attendance requirements. Also, the membership committee wanted me to remind all the members to update your profiles on the website with your current information. You know, our directory will get published here in, I think, late January or February. So we pull from that information for our directory. So, you know, just please go look at your profile on the website and update that as necessary so we get the correct information in the directory. And from our treasurer, from Alex, he gave this to me. Right now we're in really good standing again so far this year, coming up on the, you know, another scholarship season. In the checking account, we have $672,000, and in savings, we have $100,000. So again, thanks to all the volunteers, the sponsors, and everybody again that gives of all their time and their talents and their treasures to help us make these events a success and raise money to give out the level of scholarships we can. That's really all I have. I'm going to hand it off now to our current Vice President, Jim Hughes, to introduce to today's speaker. So thank you all, and hope to see you in November.
Great, thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. Folks, I'm pleased to introduce Mr. Brett Vogt with PCS, Project Consulting Services. He is the Director of Technology Solutions there. And PCS is basically an engineering, procurement, and construction management consulting firm with a lot of data-driven technology, and you'll find that out today through Brett. Brett has spent his career at PCS helping to integrate technology with a real engineering and construction, the challenges that are involved with energy infrastructure and how they capture that information. His background is in project management and design, as well as deploying traceability systems. And he currently holds a bachelor's and master's degree in civil engineering from Georgia Institute of Technology, and he currently lives in the Atlanta, Georgia area with his wife and 2 sons. So, Brett, we really appreciate you taking this on today for us, and look forward to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely, Jim. Thank you very much for the opportunity and for the introduction. I appreciate having a chance to talk about something I'm pretty passionate about. Spent a good portion of my career thus far, and anticipate it being a theme going forward. So we'll go ahead and jump right into it. So as the title indicates, we are talking about digitization, or mobile or digital technology applied to construction. And when we say we want to predict the future, just want to clarify, unfortunately, I'm not here to claim with all the fun recent events or uncertainty that's going on in our industry that this is going to allow us to predict the future of our industry per se, but that we can use this technology and this data to help learn and improve and actually predict outcomes or trends or likelihoods when it comes to what happens during construction. So as this kind of outline talks about, we'll just kind of go back in time a little bit, just talk about what we're doing today when we're not using some type of digital technology, what's typical reporting, why digital technology can provide benefits, and then ultimately get us on a path to prediction. Certainly the end game for everyone is, can you tell me when I will finish? Can you tell me what the most likely place is that we're going to have an issue? Can you help me predict improvements to quality, safety, progress? And we absolutely can show some of that. And then we'll talk about, okay, well, this is great. You've told us how easy it is to do, and you told us what you get as an outcome. Well, why isn't everyone doing this? And there's some pretty common steps to adoption, barriers to adoption that we'll walk through, and then kind of leave it with a charge to everyone for what we all individually could do to kind of keep our organizations moving forward towards this type of digital integration and improvement. All right, so to talk about kind of some limitations of typical reporting, I'm sure many of you are very familiar with this, but just to kind of get us all on a level playing field. Today, as kind of these images indicate, there are actually still, unfortunately, a good bit of handwritten reports completed when it comes to construction or operational activities. But for the most part, let's say most people are doing Word or Excel and they're typing up these reports and then transmitting them via email most likely, or in some cases actually printing them out, filing them in banker boxes that then one day get sent off, maybe to be scanned, maybe not. But there's a large amount of data that is essentially manually entered in a way where it's locked on the sheet of paper. And this just creates a huge number of data errors. There's no way to check for completeness without having a completely independent set of people, maybe do an audit or compliance review. You can easily have overlaps and incorrect stationing with a fat finger that turns 10,000 feet of clearing into 100,000 feet of clearing. You can, material data, you have all kinds of detailed data that's critical to get right, to prove compliance, as well as to ensure you're following your procedures. It's very easy to either make a data mistake or actually, what's the difference between a data mistake or a real mistake? The only report you have is what you've documented, and that's a critical issue. And then, of course, even if everyone gets the whole report filled out correctly, they've named it, they've dated it, they've signed it, well, what if they file it incorrectly? What if they give it the wrong file name? What if they save over yesterday's report and accidentally overwrite something, even if they've done all those other steps? So a huge number of opportunities to cause the data to be inaccurate. Independent of just filling out the report, there's systemic weaknesses that are becoming more and more of an issue to the whole concept of filling out a report and emailing it or transmitting it, or printing it. So I talked about the overwriting issues, but even more important to our entire industry today are cybersecurity issues. That data is extremely unsecure when it's kept on individual users' laptops, when it's not synced to a cloud, when it's emailed back and forth in an unsecure manner without any password protection. So as cybersecurity requirements ramp up, this is a very real issue, let alone disaster recovery. Unfortunately, there are a number of very real stories about crews who, for whatever reason, had a disagreement while involved on a construction project and decided to destroy records, take records with them as they left the project or were asked to leave the project. And your data as an operator, your critical data about what was actually built, what was constructed, could be damaged in that incident. And so now, without digital data that's secured in servers and protected, there's a risk to having information that's only kept on one person's laptop or in only one box physically. And at the end of the day, if they get all that right, get all the files, imagine they printed them out, they filed them correctly, they had it all perfectly lined up in all the banker boxes. Well, then at the end of the day, we're depending on the image quality of the scan. Can we read it? Was it obscured? Was something folded? And then all of a sudden, your data is again infected. So at the end of the day, we do this. This is very common all across our industry. But the way we go about getting this information from construction, which is going to set the future of everything we do to operate that asset, in pipeline, pretty much everything we build is underground. So if we don't collect this data during construction, it could be either impossible or extremely expensive to go try and recreate it. And there's just inherent weaknesses. So what can we do about that? So what we're here to talk about is to take a digital approach to how to solve this problem. Of course, everyone loves digitization. It's a buzzword. We're talking mobile. It's not a new word. It's nothing different or new that anyone's not familiar with. And probably a lot of people nodding heads, of course, yes, that would solve everything, but it's hard. Well, let's just break down what it really would involve and what you could do to build out a full digital construction management solution. So everything on the right-hand side of the screen is what everybody wants. I want dashboards of everything. I want to see a map of my project as it's built. All my documents filed perfectly and complete. Photos that I can search and query and look up. Environmental data that proves that I was a good steward, that our pipeline, our project was a good steward of the environment and met all the requirements. Right-of-way data that says that everything we said we would do for each individual landowner, we can prove that we did. Materials, let alone materials could be a whole presentation to itself, but that We know what we bought. We ensured that what we bought met our specifications, and we installed what we bought where we intended to install it. And we have a record of that whole process that we can prove and operate by. And then, as this presentation will get to, at the end of the day, how can we learn from all of that and get better and predict? So if the right-hand side is the end goal, how do we get it? Well, for us, it goes all the way back, and this presentation will talk about a lot of kind of elements of that, but all the way back to the beginning. When you are starting a new construction project, you have to input all of these items that ensure that you get everything out on the other side. So from the beginning, from your design documents, what are your welding specifications and parameters that are specific to the procedures used? What are the amps, the volts, the travel speed? What are the ranges that are allowed? Even simple things like the project configuration. What spreads? How many spreads do you have? What are they called? Do you have other sites or facilities? Who are the contractors on each? What base lay items or unit items do you have for each spread or facility that you're planning to track? In other words, for you to get accurate and reliable data on the right-hand side of the screen, you have to set yourself up for success at the beginning of the project by standardizing and developing a set of data standards in the beginning that you then move through. Well, this is great, and it's great for me to sit here and obviously, a non-field environment in a nice button-down shirt and talk about, pie in the sky, IT, technology ideas. But the key to all of this is right there in the middle with the mobile inspection forms. If we can create a system that has inputs that make drop-downs, pre-fills, form calculations simpler and easier for the people who actually collect the data, and when they open up a form, they have fewer choices. It can fill out some of the form for them. It can simplify the effort that they have to go through already to write down what it is that happened during construction. Then we can actually make the job of the field user easier, while at the same time allowing them to capture more data and more data accurately, that we ultimately then flow all together into one big project workspace. And when you compile all this data that was collected accurately and with a high level of standardization, then the right-hand side of your screen becomes possible. So I kind of already started talking about it, but to me, these are the key benefits to digitization that also are the foundation upon which we are going after for the prediction idea. So the first one, data standardization, is a fun IT data nerd sounding term, but it really kind of comes down to calling a spade a spade. For example, if you want to go collect data during construction about how many mats were used, where were they used versus what was planned, you need to define how you name or call that item. Is it mats, right-of-way mat, installed mats, matting, etc. Ironically, if everyone calls it the same name, then you have the ability to aggregate the data in a database and generate reports on plan versus actual, trends, averages, etc. Just the simple idea that everyone calls the same thing by the same name is essentially what data standardization is about in simple terms. The next item that we have to get right, and that digitization makes easier, is data accuracy. So it's one thing to have a data standard, but if we don't collect the data accurately, then all the dashboards and reports that we want are unreliable. And the second they're unreliable, it kind of was a waste of time. So we want to build into the system any way we can to minimize transcription. So are there places where we can, if we know the pipe number, we can fill out for the user the grade, the heat, the wall thickness, the length, the coating type, so they don't have to type all of those things out, that we have a lookup. Are there ways we can use pre-fills? Well, we know who they are and what date they started the form on, or if they pick this spread, we know the AFE and the contractor for that. In other words, can we reduce the amount of time that the user has to get it perfect and write down exactly what is needed? And then even more importantly are validations. Simple things like, did they fill out everything that you expected them to fill out? Did they put their name, the date? Did they sign it? If they start a section of a form, do they finish that section? So if they start recording progress about backfill progress, did they put a start station and an end station? Did they also put a comment if you require a comment? So little things that ensure that before that user, before that inspector or foreman hits send on that form, that there's a higher level of accuracy than there ever was. And all of those things kind of flow to what we're going after, which are the analytics. We can only create analytics off of data that we can aggregate and that's standardized and that is accurate and that's reliable. And when you combine those two things in a way that's easier for an inspector or foreman to fill out, you get the type of dashboarding that everyone's going after. And the key to all of this is the concept of building a digital twin. A digital twin basically is saying that I have a copy digitally of what we've built physically. Given that we're going to operate this asset for hopefully 50 plus years, and we're going to do so already with a ton of electronic systems, our GIS systems, many of our databases for integrity and other corrosion that are already kind of very digital systems, risk, putting into that system a perfect or near, as accurate as possible digital copy of what was actually built is going to be critical to ensuring that for the future of that entire asset's life cycle, we can ask a question and get an accurate answer and therefore operate it really well and effectively. And that is how we kind of drive towards safety, quality, and compliance. And to take this full circle is when we do that on a repeated basis, then we can learn from the data. We can actually ask questions of the data that we've never been able to ask before. Like, is there a certain weld procedure that has a higher reject rate than than others? Does what type of environmental activity, what type of construction activity is more likely to have environmental incidents related to it? Are there certain contractors that have more environmental incidents statistically related to them than others? All these questions kind of become possible. So to kind of take this from a fun, nice presentation and kind of walk you through how we get all of these things and get out the output, I'm going to switch to a little bit of a live demonstration of these concepts. So first off, let me get my tablet mirrored so you guys can see what a digital form would look like for an average inspector or foreman. All right, and we can see how the process of data standardization and data accuracy can be applied right here on the form and make the job easier. So for example, you can see that this demo user, I've logged in, it already knows who I am, my name, my date. It gives me an auto-generated report number. When I click on project name, it only gave me the projects that I was actually assigned to. So that's the only choices I had. I couldn't type in the name wrong. I couldn't name it differently. When I clicked on AFE, that project only has one AFE assigned to it. So I only have one choice, kind of hard to get that wrong. When I click on spread, in this case, whatever spreads or sites or facilities would pop up. Even something as simple as weather. This is where data standardization is just so perfectly given an example. There is so much we can learn about trends between weather and different construction activities, and being able to better predict weather and understand which type of weather affects which activities more, and getting actual quantified, we know that inherently, but getting quantifiable amounts. See, with my screen sharing, it's not mirroring to you guys. Let me try and click something. See if it refreshes. There we go. Apologize. So just having weather standardized so that they all, call it the same way with what are the weather activities, then you can aggregate and average and trend and analyze all of those components. Other simple things about data accuracy is contractor. I only have one choice. So right there, just in the header, the key principles of data standardization and data accuracy play out. Everyone, I had to pick, I didn't type a single thing. So that's standardized data. And then I also didn't type a single thing, which made it more accurate, as well as the fact that it learned based on my previous selections and ensured that I was only making choices that were applicable to my previous choices. So if we'll come in and we'll just enter in some progress, kind of continuing to show how we can make this easier on people. So I picked from the base lay items that were a part of spread one. Those are the only choices I had. I'll come in, I'll do stationing, and you can see even from a station formatting standpoint, I didn't have to indicate how to format stationing correctly. That's a pretty common challenge for some personnel. And then also we don't want anybody doing any math. Even if you're great at math, you can make common mistakes. So we'll do the math for you in time to turtle footage, as well as you can see, we might design a pipeline one way and we build it another way, but we need to accrue that as positive footage when we go to our progress reporting. Besides linear items, you certainly can have unit items, and having them only in here that are applicable to the spread that you're working on simplifies things. Also, having it automatically fill out the unit of measure ensures that everyone's measuring and quantifying things the same way. And then we can require that they have to put information about where that was installed. Maybe all of that was installed at one spot. And then besides digitizing and improving the progress and the unit and the pay item data that we collect, certainly photos are a huge element of being able to ensure that we followed the specs and procedures that we agreed to. So whether you take a live photo or you go to your photo library and grab one, we want to be able to really quickly pull that in. You can see it even got the date of the photo. Maybe we want to be able to sketch on something. Add that in, associate a GPS photo, a GPS point with that photo. Maybe even put some comments, that you wanted to say. That will help make that more searchable in the future. All of this, and just hit complete and you're off and running. Another key area where data accuracy and data standardization play a really important role is in welding. So correctly collecting welding data accurately in great detail is certainly a quality, a compliance item that is critical to everything we do. I mean, we spend a ton of time both from construction managing welding, but from a compliance and quality standpoint, welding gets a lot of our focus, as it should. So if I kind of finish filling out the header here, just kind of get us oriented. As I fill out the header, it's actually looking into a database of all the possible assets that I could weld. That allows me to then take advantage if there are barcodes or part numbers or pipe numbers. I can use that to fill out the weld form of what was welded to what. So in this case, I'll take a picture of a barcode. And you can see there in the upstream asset, it knows what type of asset it was, the heat, diameter, wall thickness, grade, coating, length. I didn't have to type any of that. So there you are with data accuracy greatly increasing. Even weld number, we can take advantage of a barcode if there are some, or you can type it in to, again, try to minimize transcription and drive accuracy up. I can indicate the visual. I can indicate what type of weld it is. I can come in and type welder initials or welder stencils, that may be there. And then even more importantly, I can come in and take photos of the weld and the welder stencil to also save and archive with this. So not only do I have, my digital information, but I can also have a picture to back it up in case someone made a fat finger or had an issue. I can have the actual stencil and the actual photo there. Get down to the other side, the downstream asset, and again, I can pick up and let's go ahead and get my other barcode and scan that barcode for the other side. And again, complete the downstream asset information. The key here, again, back to data standardization and data accuracy is, look how much data I just collected on a weld and how much I actually typed versus how much I got to leverage because we loaded the data in advance and we simplified what the user has to do to get through all that. So let's play this out. Now, what do you get? So you've collected data this way and you've collected it accurately. What do you actually get out of doing that? And let's go through some of the analytics. So in this example, this is a daily progress report, probably very similar to some you've seen in Excel or others, but it will automatically aggregate and build it for you as all those personnel collected data digitally. Because we called it trenching or ditching, whichever we standard on, in this case ditching, and one person didn't call it trenching and another person called it the opposite. We picked one and we standardize on it, as well as all these other things. We can build these reports even up to the tunes of many users all filling out their forms simultaneously and submitting and getting aggregated so you can see this. You also have the ability to ask questions and get further analysis from your data that are quickly at your fingertips that are helpful during construction. So you saw how we had material loaded and scanned, and if you track that material, whether at welding or from shipments and receipts, you can build inventory dashboards as this one shows, and go and dive into your data in the middle of the project to ask questions like, okay, well, what is the material that I have in the leak yard? And I can let my internet catch up to me. There we go. Click on the leak yard, and you can see it quickly pivots and shows that I have 7,800 feet. And here are all the individual joints and all their properties and when they were received that are in that yard. Another example could be, okay, well, I need to know where a specific material is. Where is that material? Where's our last known location? So you can type in your asset ID, your pipe part number. Don't hit delete, that doesn't do any good. Hit enter and search on that material, and you can see it quickly pivots and says my last known location was in the leak yard. And I can even pull up the form when it was received in that yard and kind of prove right out where did that, how do I know it's in the leak yard? When's the last time we received it? And here's the form that shows me when it was received and who filled it out, and kind of have that proof. So lastly on the analytics is to dive into welding. We could spend a bunch of time on welding alone. Let's just look at some of the interesting items that kind of come out of this one dashboard. So we're deep into welding, weld types on the left, all different kinds specific to how this project delineated them. And on the far right at the bottom, you can see this total reject rate of 1.35%. And that is just great. And if you just saw that reject rate at any point during the project, you probably wouldn't even spend more time worrying or looking into this particular spread because they're performing at a really high level. With a little bit more context though, the data can also help us look into something that might be an issue. So this is a spread that had mechanized welding, and you can see here, this is the weld type initials they use for mechanized welding, and 4,200 out of the 5,700 welds were mechanized, and the reject rate of that was essentially 0. So essentially a large portion of this is actually being driven, that reject rate, because of the mechanized welding. So if we get to the end of the project, and I'm actually going to click down here to a weld type that was driven by manual welding, you can actually see that the reject rate, once my internet catches up to me, I'm waiting on you guys, I'm ahead of you on voice, I'm watching your audience view. There we go. It's actually 7%. So, I mean, not awful, but certainly a big difference between 1% and 7%. So things like this, as the project's going to dive into this data and be able to say, hey, we should anticipate that when we get to the end of the project and mainline's done, and we're basically down to manual only welds, that we can't project forward that 1.35 reject rate. We have to actually project forward a more accurate rate based on how we're doing to date on the project with our actual manual welding. In addition to that, you can also ask the question, well, what is the most common defect? Is there some kind of common issue with the procedure or the environment that is causing a trend that maybe we can get ahead of during the project? And you can see down here in this donut of defect type, elongated slag inclusion greatly stands out as the most common defect. And I can click on it and the data pivots and it shows me all the weld types and where those defects have occurred. And again, most of them have occurred on that same manual welding type right there. So it's a most common defect, but it's certainly a defect that is more common in manual welding. So then we can ask the next obvious question, which is, okay, well, are there any welders, any specific people? I mean, is there a bad apple that's really causing this, or is this a systemic trend? And on the far right, this is all the defects by welder ID. And you can see pretty easily, this visual pops out, that there are a pretty low number of individual welders that account for almost 50% of all defects. And then, even more than that, there's actually one welder who accounts, if I let my mouse hover on this, I think it's over 16%. I'll go ahead and see which welds this person actually welded on. So we'll click on them and let the data pivot. So they were a part of that bad weld type above, and you can see that 16% of all defects on this spread of 5,700 welds is actually attributed to one welder. And I know everyone would, make the joke, well, they'd never survive, or we'd run them off. And I get it. I certainly understand that without doing this type of data, that our current expertise and processes would have identified an issue. but maybe this could be identified a little sooner. And what if this welder was identified that much sooner to drive down reject rates, to increase production, that much more quickly figure out exactly what is happening. So the last piece of analytics that I want to walk through before we get to kind of some barriers and the prediction is spatial. It's great to know what has happened during construction, but it is critically important for all of our projects in the world, in the business that we do, to know where. So this is just a quick view of a pipeline. You can see the construction activities are tracked and they're overlaid. So the only ones that are kind of the most recent activity is what's showing. And you can quickly see that the pink is everywhere we backfilled and that we're in the part where final cleanup is working its way to complete the project. So it's pretty far along, but it's really easy to see where has final cleanup occurred, where has it not occurred. In addition to that, with all this data collected, again, like back to the start, digitally, accurately, in a standardized manner, I can click anywhere on the pipeline and any report that deals with that section of the pipeline. Here's the clearing report. Here's the firing line for that section. Here's the backfill, and you can see all the details about it, you know, when that was filed, what inspector did it, and I can even click and go right to the form. Is all present. But let's go even closer, and let's look at even more interesting data. It's great to know where a form was filled out or, you know, where progress was accrued, but a lot of times we have issues around this road, on this particular parcel, around this stream crossing, and we need photos. We need photos of that, of the work that we were doing right there in that point in space. And as a GoToMeeting is, I apologize, I'm looking at your audience view, taking a little while to catch up. It's going to be zooming in and showing a dot. Eventually, we'll get to it where it gets on screen, showing a dot with all of the location of all photos. All right, some dots are starting to come. So I'm just, while it's getting there slowly for you, I'm just going to go ahead and click because that way you can get the idea. So every photo comes up as a dot, and you can see photos of the weld tags. You can see photos of the right-of-way. So all of these photos start to come up spatially, but we also have ways to search for them by user, by date, by form type, by keyword that was in the comments, like you saw me fill out. And so now we get to know not only what was done, but where was it done. And that's hugely helpful, particularly in our industry that's so spatial. So I've just laid out what seems like a bunch of great benefits. I mean, great dashboards, I can get all that insight, made it look easy. But why isn't more of the industry using this? And there's just some barriers to adoption that are specific to digital pipeline construction management. But honestly, any process change, any technological change kind of faces these same challenges. And the first one is that there is a need for a near-term investment. You have to, set this system up. You have to, organize your teams and processes and training. You have to get everyone kind of on board and adapt to it up front. So there's kind of an upfront cost that accrues over the life of that asset when you get the benefit of that data for a long period of time. So it takes a little bit of vision for someone to say, I can tell right now if we invest in this, it's going to pay out. There are many, many projects, and those are probably the ones that are all using it, where it pays out immediately because of the complexity of the project or the size. But it really does help anything that operates at this long of a life to have accurate, reliable data. It just may take time for that to accrue. And given how we're structured, where CapEx costs and OpEx costs really don't kind of fall in the same bucket, there's no real life cycle evaluation of ROI in many of our projects. There's, does it help me improve my construction budget schedule, ROI just during construction? And if something has to kind of cross that silo and also accrue benefits to operations, it can become a tricky investment. We have culture. Everyone has culture. Every industry has culture. Everyone here is very familiar with pipeline culture. I could talk and joke about it for a while, but at the end of the day, it's a group of people who have committed to a really tough, challenging lifestyle to build infrastructure where nobody else in the world really is, in remote locations, be away from their family, all of that. And it's a culture based on experience, based on relationships, and based on familiarity with what they've done and seen in the past. So change is hard for any human, and change is especially hard for an industry that's based on personnel who've really dedicated themselves to like a lifestyle that they're used to. So it's just change. We have to make sure that when we hand this device and this tablet to somebody, it actually helps them in their day-to-day field life. It isn't just management requiring that they do more work. So kind of along those lines is the effort, like we talked about, dialing down the effort to learn something new and starting simple and starting with the easier wins is a key item for opportunity. So the risk or the barrier is that I show you this presentation or someone gives you this presentation, management gets all excited, they want to go all the way, they want to go all in. Kind of jumping to my last point there too. And they want to completely see that final solution with all the analytics and all the prediction. And where they are today is they're filing paper in banker boxes. And I'll kind of talk about it in an upcoming slide, but trying to jump too far too fast, putting your organization through a great amount of effort of process change and technological change can actually be a hindrance to the success of an idea like this. On technical support, it's one thing to have available, reliable technical support that can answer the phone. It's a completely different thing to have someone who understands what a weld procedure is, who understands why a tie-in weld is different than a mainline firing weld, and why the process of what a tie-in inspector has to record is different than an inspector inspecting the same construction activity say like field joint coating during mainline, and what the differences are. So technical support that can both know and support the solution as well as support the infrastructure that's actually being implemented and can empathize and understand, or maybe hopefully even worked as a field of personnel, is really helpful. And then, like I mentioned, a huge barrier to adoption is trying to go for the home run. Organizationally, we're not set up really well for this. We have, like I said, a CapEx team, a lot of times capital teams, we have operational teams, in many cases, integrity and other elements that would benefit from a solution, project control, supply chain. This solution touches all of them and really can benefit, supply chain and project controls and, project management and engineering and operations. And it's awesome to try to integrate all of those and to go with that vision of getting them all working through one method of digital data capture and, building that comprehensive digital twin. But to try to loop them all in and go for that home run where everybody's singing Kumbaya and the system works perfectly for every group at the same time can actually prevent a successful implementation, because it's more than you got to start with singles. In playoff baseball right now, it's sure great to hit the walk-off home run, but most likely the team that's gonna win the World Series is gonna hit a lot of singles consistently. So we definitely recommend that approach. So then the question then becomes, how do you get to prediction? So about all these analytics, but let's get to prediction. Let's learn and let's get better than what we do today. How does the data actually help me improve beyond just giving me, nice charts and graphs, and maybe I can help that's helpful or not. So this is a data maturity path that we kind of walk through a lot of times when we sit down with folks. And it really kind of comes from doing this over many, many years, and kind of realizing that organizations tend to go through a similar path as they look to mature how they leverage and use data. And file cabinets are on there because paper data is data. I mean, data is not a digital only thing. And if everyone wants to get to 5 where we're doing exploratory or predictive analysis, but we can't just jump. We have to take steps along the path. So the key here is that we know where we are. So first step is to understand where your organization is, or where your team or your group is, whoever it is that's looking to do some type of digitization. Know where you are on this path, and then take one step. Have a vision, certainly have a vision for where you want to get to, but know where you are and take one step. Most of our organizations, we're somewhere in the 2 or 3 range. We probably have many things in databases. They most likely don't talk to each other, but we have lots of databases and lots of data. And then we probably also have a lot of files on our network that contain a lot of critical information that we have to hunt for files or hunt for Word documents or PDFs. So most of us tend to be between 2 and 3. So if we're sitting here and we're listening, like, yeah, I want to get to prediction, you have to know where you are. And if you're in 2 or 3, step 1 is to digitize and standardize your data, collect it accurately, get those existing reports and dashboards on existing data, and then prediction comes after that. Let's talk about how prediction actually plays out and what it can look like. So this is an example of a dashboard that can help with prediction. It's behavioral safety, or like a leading safety indicator. It's actually recording small safety deviations is what they describe, in which it's not a safety incident, but it's an indication of personnel on the site not following the precise safety procedures and precautions, or putting themselves in unsafe situations, and then the safety team observing that and kind of recording, it's not necessarily a near miss, but recording deviations from what would be ideal safety behavior. So looking at this really quickly, and we spend a lot of time just going into it, let's just focus on the 3 contractors here that have the most deviations. So kind of hypothetical or rhetorical question, because everyone's muted. Looking at those 3, the question is, which contractor has the highest leading indicator that they're in need of improving their safety culture? And this is counting total incidents, but the key is they have a formula and an algorithm in which they rate the different incidents in a different way. And if I sort this, give it to me in a second, where it's sorted by the percent of observations that have a deviation. In other words, 100%, or the other way around, 100% would be 100% of the time that you were a safety inspector, performed a review, you passed, and you had no deviations. So real quickly, it looks like this contractor here is by far the greatest violator of the safety culture that they're tracking. But if we kind of focus in on them, they're actually down here and actually the best of the 3. So it's not just the total number of items, but comparing that. So having insight to this data allows them to kind of see trends in leading indicators and to kind of put a story to it. On a project, this actually was used. There was an indication that a specific contractor was trending in the wrong direction. They could see it. They could see the percentage going in a way that was beyond others on the site. They actually brought them in, talked to them about that, gave a warning. And the story is, I was not present. The story is they didn't really heed the warning. And 2 weeks later, they actually had a legitimate incident. So how this gets better and better over time will be how a specific operator uses it, how they dial in their formula, how they learn from actual incidents and projects. And that is all baked into the element here, where this is not showing me actual safety incidents, but it's a leading indicator, a predictor of where to focus your time on. All right, another way that we can use this data to predict. Everyone wants to know, am I on schedule? Am I on budget? I mean, the million-dollar question of pipeline construction. And it's not new to have S-curves or progress curves like this in any way, but the ability for the data to learn and to iterate, and I'll kind of walk through that. So the green, just kind of get everybody oriented, the green is actual progress. The yellow is the plan. So just real quick to orient you on this particular case, actual progress is 98%. The plan through this report date was 94%, so they're ahead. This is fully weighted down to the individual activity or even unit item if you're tracking unit items for cost. So each activity is individually weighted by spread, by site, by location, all aggregated and rolled up into one nice line. So this is actually quite, it can be a quite complex project for multiple sites or spreads that are all equally weighted, or not equally, but all weighted appropriately and rolled together into one view. So looking at this, it's great. They're ahead of schedule, and the dashed red line is the forecast. They're going to stay ahead of schedule. But let's kind of dive in a little deeper and look at one particular spread and kind of look at a little bit of the history of that spread and see if we can figure out what happened. So in this particular case, we're looking at one spread. Again, they're doing well, but you can see back here on the 4th or the 5th, they are actually at 69% versus a plan of 74%. So they're behind. So at this point, they were quite further back, and the straight bar charts at the bottom are incremental progress. So each week, what did you do? So anytime a green bar is above a yellow bar, that's a good week. It's showing you that we had more actual progress than we planned. So how is it that they caught up so significantly? So to save everyone some time to kind of jump ahead on it, we can dive in and kind of look at really what the source of that jump was. And for those 2 weeks, the 12th and the 19th is where they made up all of that time. The source, if I dive in and actually look at specific activities, again, this is all because we collected it accurately, we collected it in a standardized way. You can see that they were behind schedule again on tie-ins, and then jumped in 2 weeks and got well ahead of schedule. And that was actually the activity that threw them ahead for the whole spread as well. And to kind of tease this out and just jump ahead again, not showing you, you can go and look at welding, mainline welding, and see that it ended 1 or 2 weeks to the 12th and 19th. So we all know, anecdotally, we all know it's true, when mainline ends, we're going to be able to put all those resources, or many of those resources, into tie-in crews. And it's not real rocket scientists to expect that tie-ins would increase in productivity after mainline was complete. Well, what's interesting to see is you can see that the plan that the team originally loaded was linear. And for tie-ins, they just, straight equal rate all along. They didn't account for that. They probably should have. But what's great about this data, and what's great about the ability to predict, is now we have a quantifiable difference. We can see what actual data was going. Let's say even the week prior, we did 7%. And then when the first week the mainline team had been converted to tie-ins, we did 14%. And then the second week we did 30, and basically at that point they were done with tie-ins. So you can see the quantifiable amount of additional progress that is possible when a mainline team or crew is dispersed and becomes additional tie-in crews. And now build that in, so the future plan, this yellow line for the next spread or next project, should have and can have that anticipated bump, so you can more accurately predict where you're going to go in the future. All right, we'll do one more prediction. So another thing we can predict, this is showing, and it comes from a paper with TC Energy as a part of the International Pipeline Conference. So I'll do a little bit, but for the most part, anyone who attended the conference has access to this paper. It's cited at the bottom, so you can go and dive in and read more. They have other analytics that they actually were investigating besides just this one. But we can ask the question, which contractor is more likely, or is there a way to statistically assume that there are certain contractors who are more likely to have an environmental incident than others? Or is it just bad luck or a bad project? Well, collecting data at scale over a program of projects over a number of situations, you can actually start to develop trends and averages that are reliable. Just showing you some of the environmental incident rates that have been measured for significant incidents between contractors, and actually between the top 3 contractors with environmental incidents that had over 500 inspections. And then you could ask the question, well, is there a common trend to which activities are most likely to have significant environmental impacts during those activities? And you can see in the yellow, you can see where the significant activities occur and where those are most likely to occur. So you can continue to see how, with this data, we're able to learn, continue to grow going forward. All right, so let's wrap it all up. So how do we move forward? I talked about it before, but just how do you move your organization forward? Take one step. Take one small step, don't take 3. Engage with people who've done this before. Engage with people who've tried it. There's a lot that you learn from lessons learned. No one size fits all. You have to adapt the concepts to your culture, your technology, your processes. And then start with a pilot and live by the phrase, for the pilot, but not forever. You might want to automate or create a new analytic or a new prediction right out the gate, but it kind of involves a new form or new data or some new process. For the pilot, just plan a pilot and keep it simple. Have it digitize something you already do. And along those lines, don't create a process at the same time that you're introducing technology. Start by just digitizing what you already do today, and then change your processes in future iterations. And that's where being agile and changing and adapting over time allows you to actually work your way up that data maturity path to get to prediction. And lastly, we have to just recognize that as humans, as organizations, we are all subject to these graphs on the right. One with the line is what's called the hype curve. So any new interest or new technology or new process kind of follows this path. This is true, honestly, for any organizational change. There's always this interest in the beginning, and there's a couple of early adopters and innovators who just jump right on board and are all about it. And then the reality sets in of changing hard, and you start encountering people who didn't sign up for this, and they're being asked to do something different, and it creates what's called the trough of disillusionment. And you just have to know that this is going to happen. This will happen every single time, no matter how well you plan. You can just kind of squeeze down maybe the duration or the depth, but you will start with a lot of excitement. You will go through a trough of disillusionment, and it's in that trough where success is determined or not. And that's where, you know, your planning, your team, your foresight and your vision, and whatever you can do to shorten the trough and to reduce the depth is going to be the key. So if you bite off any type of element we do to move one step forward, recognize that when you go to move forward, you're going to follow this path. So with that, I hope this helps you kind of see what is possible when you digitize data during construction that we kind of take for granted, the analysis that we can provide, how we can build a set of standard and accurate data that allows analytics and ultimately prediction to occur. And that, you know, there's kind of some benefits and common lessons learned that apply to technology and processes that we can honestly use in any implementation of any new idea to hopefully continue to move our industry forward and ultimately, you know, make us a more higher quality, greater safety, more compliant, more, you know, better environmental stewards, so that we continue to move, you know, energy throughout the world and benefit, you know, the world as a whole with how we do our business. So thank you very much, and I'll be available for any questions.
Thanks, Brad. I'm sure a lot of people were looking at that, and their mouths were salivating at the technology and wishing they had dashboards like that. We've had a few questions come in. The first one from Jim Hughes says, people have been talking about digitizing and mobile technology for years. What is the difference about today and people's willingness to consider this type of technology?
It's a great question. There's a lot of things. I guess a big component, though, having done this for a while and kind of watched the barriers start to drop, is I would say mobile literacy. So almost every single human that would be involved in the construction process is honestly a much more of a mobile hardware software expert. I mean, 3 years ago, 2 years, 5 years ago, they all carry a smartphone. And honestly, thanks to Google and Apple putting very useful, very functional devices in our hands and kind of training all of us how to use them, the ability to deploy a digital technology to a remote environment, to hundreds and thousands of individuals that are all easily trained, is never been easier. And I think that's a big key. The fundamental technology, the fact that we have a digital concept, the fact that it can work offline, the fact that it can sync data between bases, it's actually quite old. But I think the difference now is that everyone can easily adopt it because we've been well trained with our own personal, mobile use.
The next question is from Alex McConnell. Does this concept only work in large projects and programs, or can it work in smaller projects as well?
That's a great question. So certainly large projects and programs can accrue the benefits of larger data sets faster. So the economies of scale for software technology, certainly that's one of the great things about software, is that if you get it set up, doing it for 5 users is probably about the same effort as doing it for 500 once it's set up and running and scale. So you definitely accrue benefits more significantly on larger projects or programs. But The difference is the other benefit of software is as we all learn and as technology and hardware and software starts to reduce its cost, both in implementation and in maintenance, we actually have, this is kind of one of the big differences over, my career. We actually have brought down the cost of implementation such that, yes, we're training today on a 3-mile one-off single replacement, pipe replacement project that's a part of an operational pipe replacement. And we even have projects that have, one user for a week. We even have individual digs that they've used it for. So you have to right size the implementation. You probably don't want to have the weekly progress forecasting and prediction on a couple of week integrity dig project. You wouldn't want to do that. But there is a right size of digitization that can probably fit any project in pipeline construction right now.
Righty here. Is there a challenge that you face that is common between operators and implementations? This one's from Barbara Powell.
Sure. We talked about a lot of them in the presentation in terms of common barriers and challenges that we face with silos of silos of organizational components all trying to get a stake and try to make the system work for them. But I think one that we didn't speak about is it's pretty common that leadership buy-in, whether it's present or not, is a key component that sets the trajectory for success significantly on, honestly, any culture change or process change, but particularly for this type of technology. For the most part, the benefits most greatly, through to leadership, to the project managers, to directors, vice presidents who can see the data come in, can get a breadth of everything that's going on, can learn and improve on project to project. That's where the greatest benefits tend to accrue, and so they tend to be the greatest champions. And this has nothing to do with this concept, but just anytime the quote ivory tower or corporate pushes down an initiative, it can be difficult. So having their buy-in to go down and spend time with the field and explain why it's important, explain why it's helpful, explain why the organization is going to be better, explain why in the method that they've gone to implement it, they've actually considered a significant number of how it affects the construction process and the field personnel, and they've actually spent time hopefully simplifying, maybe even making the field personnel's jobs easier. And if you can go in there and tell that story and you have leadership support, it's going to really help you through that trough of disillusionment. The moment where this comes together is exactly in that trough. People are going to be excited, and the first presentation that we're doing this is always going to go well. When you're in the middle of a new project and you're onboarding tons of personnel and inspectors, and you're trying to get trainings, and someone's tablet breaks, or they can't sync to the internet, or their internet, all the little things that are going to happen no matter what you try to do when there's something new. If there's not clear leadership saying, look, we had planned challenges, we have unplanned challenges, but we have a team set to solve this, and it's still important for us to solve, you can kind of head off at the pass the potential for people to just quit and give up. At the end of the day, this concept only works if everyone involved actually believes in it. You can't have a good dashboard without good data, and you can't have good data without field personnel believing that what they do matters, and what they type or select, scan, actually has significant implications to the safety and quality and life of the pipeline.
All right, thank you for that. Just wanted to give this information that came in from Brad McLean. He's spoken to our group before, and he was saying that today's presentation touched on predictive safety analytics. and he wanted to remind our membership that the INGA Foundation is hosting the first of 3 workshops on leading safety indicators starting tomorrow. So if you're interested in that, look for the INGA's Foundation's leading safety indicators. So thanks, Brad. Let's see, another question from Jim Flynn. How long before project kickoff do you recommend the client to enter into discussions on your format?
The fun caveat is depends on the scale of the project. You're doing 500 miles and 5 spreads and 15 to 20 meter stations and facilities. It could be a different combination. So we'll just kind of use a generic, let's just say like a 30-mile project. It's not generic at all, but just to kind of put us in a middle zone. There, are technologies out there, which we would advocate for ourselves as well, but there are technologies out there that have a solution ready to go in the sense that you're going to use their existing platform, their existing dashboards, kind of their existing integrations, 4-6 weeks in advance. You could both, and it's really not that there's all those people working constantly, but that you've collected all the information, you've configured it, you've had the meetings, the trainings, the planning, and you're up and running. And that is not an issue at all for anyone kind of using existing platforms as they exist. At least for our case, I'm sure for others too. There's also the option if you need to use specific forms or dashboards or reports that are specific to your organization that your organization requires that are reused or continue to be used, but in a digital format, it could extend that timeline a little bit. And to be quite honest, we accommodate that many times. There's almost always some element of an existing operator or process that they want to keep as is, whether that's a certain form or a certain report or a certain dashboard that they produce. And they want it produced in that same exact way. So we plan to accommodate that and make those adaptations, maybe use their welding form instead of the one that we've already built and things like that, to adapt the system specific to them. At the end of the day, adoption is the number one item to chase. Getting adoption well, getting everyone in the organization and on the project with how they already operate as much as possible to have that match up with what the solution is able to do. That concept of don't create a new process when you introduce a new technology is key to getting adoption to go really high. And when you get adoption really high, you get all the data and the analytics that everyone wants.
All right, and we've got 2 very similar questions from Imran Dasani and Salim Alex Savalon. A lot of the work that are done on pipelines, communication might be in difficult spots. So they're asking about the forms that you were showing off, how available they are offline as well.
Great. For our particular example, and everything that I showed you it works exactly the same way, fully offline. I was online in order to mirror my tablet, but it does a sync similar to your Outlook. So if it has a or Wi-Fi connection, the form and the database behind it will sync in both directions, and then you work fully offline. So you have all that material data, all those lookups, all those pre-fills fully offline with you. You can use the barcode scanner, take photos, everything, and then save the form, submit the form, and then when you get a connection again in the background, it'll sync and send in all of the data that you've collected since the last time. So it kind of makes it as seamless as it can be, just like your Outlook kind of works for you. You can work offline, do email, on the plane or whatnot, and then when you get a connection, everything transfers and supports what you've already done.
Great, and then along the lines of cost of the technology, Michael Lopez sent this in. He was asking if there's a rule of thumb of the cost of using this type of technology on a pipeline project.
Oh man, that is always a good question. There's not a good, man, nobody likes this, me to say there's not a good rule of thumb. I would have to go through a number, and the conversation we're already over. Michael, I'd say reach out to me. I will give you that answer absolutely with precisely what you're looking for. There's just so many caveats to take you through, like what project, what duration, how many forms. So it's a hard rule of thumb. I can say this though, we've done more and more ROIs specific to people. And I think that's another, and maybe I should have said that earlier to the question about what's different now than in the past. The ROI is starting to greatly sway on almost all projects where we get asked in favor of doing this type of technological advancement on the project, no matter the size or complexity. I'll put it this way, there is a way to simplify it enough where there's added value that's worth the added cost on almost any pipeline construction endeavor that we've experienced. Certainly, you could also gold plate it, and it would be harder. You could do a 3-mile project that has huge amounts of custom forms and dashboards and predictive analytics and everything, every bell and whistle you could think of that doesn't kind of make sense. But there is always a ground or a middle ground where, oh, that's worth it, that's easy to implement, that works right for what we're doing, and the benefits make sense for the project.
All right, and then if you'll bear with us, we've got 4 more questions. It's a good topic, and it's definitely spurred a lot of comments and questions. This one from Michael Isteri says, how have regulators reacted to having digital data available for analytics? And then a follow-up question, are there any pitfalls with too much information?
Great. So I can't see the chat, but is ISTRE on the name? Anyway, I know if it's Mike. Hi, Mike.
Yes.
So can you give me more of this? Would be my best answer to how have regulators reacted. Regulators have always taken the stance that they don't tell you how to go about it, or they don't recommend one method over another method. They kind of set the minimum bar of what's expected, and then want the industry to really focus on best practices of how to go about implementing the minimum requirements that they define. So in this case, when we've been involved in regulatory reviews or regulatory audits or other examples where the regulators want to see or need to see kind of the richness of the data, it almost goes overwhelmingly in the side of like, well, this is great, I wish more people did this. It really shows that you've really taken the time to collect every little bit of detail. The reality is, let's just be really honest out there, I mean, we are not perfect. And I think that's one of the things that makes me excited about doing this is like, how can we learn how to get better? I mean, we need to improve. We need to improve our safety record, our track record of quality. Certainly we're building a lot of things fast, and the statistics are still strikingly good when you look at it at the whole, but there's no reason why we don't chase zero. There's no reason why we can't achieve 0 incidents, particularly those related to construction quality. Really need to be something that is the standard. So the reality is we have very much supported and provided richness of data to show what was actually done during construction in the area of incidents. And that greatly helps sometimes prove that maybe construction wasn't the fault. Maybe there was, and as we've all learned lately up in the Northeast, maybe it was land slips or subsidence that actually was more the fault, and everything was done perfectly to the standards. But then as an industry, we need to learn. We need to learn once we know that, and we can provide that richness of data, we can then understand, okay, you can't just like throw the blame on a bad welder. Maybe it isn't construction quality that we need to focus on. Maybe it's design, or maybe it's, more geotechnical elements. I mean, that's the great thing about having the data, and what the regulators appreciate is if you can create a digital picture of what happened during construction, you can learn from that. Whether that learning is construction's good enough, and there's another issue to pinpoint your time and effort, or whether it pinpoints construction issues and trends that are worth addressing. So it has been greatly helpful.
All right, 3 more questions. It says, do you have a similar program for station construction?
We do, absolutely. Focus on pipeline because it's more fun on the map. Station's just a bunch of little dots all in one spot on the map in particular, but a complete work breakdown structure for station construction, tracking compressors, meter stations, all of the above, abandonments, absolutely have to address that. What's interesting is that there just is, sorry to pontificate for a bit, there's more structure and regulatory requirements and therefore procedures that each operator has around pipeline. It's more dangerous, it's more exposed to the public. Regulators have chosen to more strictly regulate it. Inside the fence, ironically, it's the same pressures, right? And the same potential risk, but the benefit is we have a fence. So the public is a little less regulated. And in my opinion, that has kind of fallen down to our culture as an industry, not necessarily paying as close of attention to facilities as maybe they have, mainline pipe. But that's changing, and that's great that that's changing. There is a lot more attention being made to, wait a minute, we have irrelevant technology. We have this process and this standard and this double check and this way that we collect data on a mainline. Why don't we carry that into a facility? I mean, a simple one is, why don't we track welds the same way we track welds on a mainline as we do in a facility? In many cases, people don't. So the great thing about the digital technology is it makes that really easy. It makes it really easy to pivot a technology into the facility and to reuse it. And the great thing is operators are doing that. They get it. They see that that is an opportunity both for improving their construction quality as well as better progress tracking, better cost forecasting, all of the above. So absolutely, we will do that.
And you showed us a lot of good information and things that are able to be put in there electronically. Lawrence Rierick was asking, can we drop in survey work, alignment sheets, or post-pipeline commissioning information into the product?
Great. So there's different levels of integration. Survey is definitely the first one that we definitely want to address. And we do have tools where survey data gets uploaded. Actually, I don't have the map that was shown earlier. We'll actually bring in their data. In fact, one of the things we do with survey is we bring it into the same weld log that we've collected all the other information, and we compare their data to the inspector's data right in a weld dashboard right there on the screen. And then we also can take in design data from engineering for the depth of cover at the spatial location, and then compare the survey data of the actual weld depth versus the design data and show nice little green, yellow, or red dots all along the pipeline that can give you an idea of whether you've met your design depth of cover. In terms of other data, easily can bring in any spatial data that you have, whether pre-construction or post, and overlay all of that. And then besides the digital data that's collected from the forms, I mean, paper's still a big thing, so I didn't show it, but inside of Epilogue, which was the web platform that we were looking at all the dashboards and all the integration kind of coming together, that final kind of piece and solution, you can bring in scanned images, you can use optical character recognition to link those scanned images to specific assets or specific procedures. I kind of integrate all of that. So by no means am I satisfied and say that we're done integrating everything we can, but if you wanted a digital picture of a construction effort, I feel like we have a way to do it.
All right, 2 more questions and then we'll let you off the hook. Let's see, this one is from Baris Blidasi. Do you provide iPads, mobile devices, or project owners, or do the project owners provide them?
We support both. Just about everything we do and what we've learned, and I kind of didn't bring it up, but definitely something to think about is everybody's different. Everyone has different levels of existing technologically or IT support, different infrastructure. And so we kind of plug the gaps of whoever we're supporting, whether operator, contractor, et cetera. So we can go all the way from you're a one-man, show or, 2-man show type of private equity-backed midstream company and says, take care of it, all the way to, major operators who have significant IT or S teams that have, a ton of the infrastructure themselves, and we just slot in. So on the iPad question, though, we'll let people bring their own device, which we actually find to be very helpful in many cases. or we can provide them fully integrated with data and syncing and do the full maintenance of those devices as well and be totally responsible for them.
All right, this is the last question, Brett. This one's from Dennis Woods, and this may lead to an offline conversation, but we'll try the question anyway and see if you can answer some of it. Is your database software proprietary or licensed? How are you handling the data storage? Are the operators paying you in perpetuity to access their project data, or is it transferred in a usable manner to the client?
Great. Yeah, and you're right, Paul, it would probably be offline, but I can do it quickly. The answer is we can do all of the above, and we know we have to do all of the above. We transfer data, we host, we process through and hand off data. So we have to adapt. Every operator is different. They have different cybersecurity requirements, let alone that whole element. We have are going after our SOC compliance for all full cybersecurity requirements in the middle of like establishing that. So we have to support any of the above things that an operator or a contractor or other firm that's leveraging this solution needs. Whether they need us to stand up our full implementation and they just dial in essentially like from a web interface and it's all, or we have some type of data integration or transfer. And then post-project, post-construction, we do those same things. We can either we kind of have three big options. We can transfer all the data and walk away. We can also host all of the data and keep it up and running, and you can actually operate your pipeline and do future audits and compliance and all the other assets that you in the system of record. Or we can do a hybrid, and in many cases, a hybrid is pretty common where we send the data to an official system of record that your company probably already has established, but maybe might not be the easiest or best way to search for it, and then keep it hosted where you can access Epilogue at any time with the users that you've permissioned to maybe use that vehicle to find your data if your company doesn't already have a similarly accessible and kind of integrated digital job book kind of solution.
All right, thank you, Brett. And with that, I will just make a few quick announcements, and then we'll turn it over to Jim Hughes to close the meeting. Just wanted to let everybody know that the presentation that Brett went through will be posted online on our website within the next couple of days. And this session has been recorded, and within the next week or so, we will post it to our YouTube channel. So if you want to replay the meeting, you can. And then as far as scholarship credit, remember we are a 100% volunteer organization, and we've had about 470 attendees today, so record numbers. And it'll take the membership committee probably a couple of weeks to get that posted, but you'll get an email confirmation once they do. And for those of you, if you did call in without clicking the link to show that you registered, please be ready to send in a copy of your call log to get credit. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Just very quickly, just a reminder about next month's meeting on November the 2nd. It's going to be at the Norris Center, and our speaker is going to be, again, Mr. Wayne Christian, who is the head of the Texas Railroad Commission. So ought to be another lively conversation with him. He's a great speaker. So if you haven't already done so, go online, get registered for that event, and look forward to seeing you there. With that, I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting. And again, if you have any questions for either Brett or myself or Paul, please feel free to log in and just send those to us, and we'll try to take care of them as quickly as possible. Anyway, have a great afternoon.